Masrot. All the Trumot and Masrot. Thereafter, we received very clear instructions what we're going to be doing after those two mitzvot. And we learned that we're going to be going through the Jordan and going to be taking stones out of the Jordan River. Do you remember? And we're going to use stones on the other side, meaning the western side. And we're going to bring korbanot. We're going to bring korbanot. The first thing the Jewish people are going to do after taking out the stones, plastering them with plaster, writing the Sefer Torah, the words of the Torah on the stone, and so on and so forth. We're going to be performing korbanot, the first thing. Something that the Midrash says, very similar to what we did at Mount Sinai. After the Ten Commandments, God commanded the Jewish people to bring olot, burnt offerings, shlamim, peace offerings. Okay? Because at Sinai, there's what was called a Kabbalat HaBrit, the reception of this Torah covenant. And at the reception of the Torah covenant, the Jewish people at Sinai brought sacrifices. They built a mizbeach, called an altar, and they slaughtered animals, as it states in the book in Parashat Mishpatim. Some of the commentators explain so too here. As we're about to enter into the land of Israel, we see Moshe Rabbeinu telling us that when we cross the Yarden, we're going to take stones out, we're going to write the Sefer Torah there, we're going to bring korbanot after writing on all these stones. So, there seems to be a renewal, a hitchachut of the Brit that was at Sinai, so too here in entering the land of Israel. That's point number one. Point number two, I have a sefer in front of me called Avnei Bareket by Rabbi Kilav, Zecher Tzaddik Levracha. Very interesting sefer that takes some ideas from the Midrash and the Pshat, puts them together. Do you remember the instructions? Moshe Rabbeinu says what we're going to do when we get into the land of Israel after these Torah, after these korbanot, these sacrifices. We're going to march to a city in the Shomron called, last week's Parsha. We're going to march to a city in the Shomron with the letter Shin. Very good, Shechem. Okay, very good, Jackie. Shechem. And Shechem has two tall mountains, one to the north, one to the south. Those mountains are called respectively Har Grizim, Mount Grizim, that is to the south, and to the north of Shechem is Har Eval. One is also called Har Bracha, the blessing of, and blessing obviously, and the other, Mount Eval, obviously is called Har Kilala. Okay. There we read in last week's Parsha that Moshe is instructing that 6 tribes will stand atop of Har Grizim. Another 6 tribes stand atop of Har Eval. The tribe of Levi, with the Kohanim as well, will be in the valley, in the actual city of Shechem. And then they're going to chant out brachot and klalot. Although we read only in the last week's parsha the word arur, cursed is the man. Okay? The Talmud tells us in Masechet Sotah, once they said cursed is the man, maybe to Mount Eval, and they answered Amen, namely accepting it. Then they were turned to Mount Bracha, Baruch HaGever, blessed is the man that will not do the idols, and so on and so forth. So, here, after the making of the Torah acceptance upon entering the land of Israel and doing korbanot, we're going to march up to Shechem, Mount Gerizim, Mount Eval, and there's going to be blessings and curses on top of this mountain. This too is part of Torah acceptance. It's not enough that we accepted the Torah at Mount Sinai. Coming into the land of Israel is a new game, is a new life, a new existence, a new essence, a more total essence. Okay? Having a national IV in the desert with the man coming down daily, except for Shabbat, and the rolling stone providing water for so many years for the Jewish people. to come into the land of God, the land of the Torah, ki mitzion tetzei Torah, there's a new need for the renewal of the Brit. Hearing the written Torah offered by the Kohanim and the Leviim, and listening to the brachot and kalalot, connected the Jewish people together. Okay? Just like we at Sinai, the Midrash says based on the Torah, we heard what was seen, and we saw what was heard. Now we're hearing and seeing this Torah acceptance in the Shomron. After that happened, Moshe Rabbeinu in last week's Parashat said, if you listen and hearken to God's Torah mitzvot, then all these brachot will come upon you. And there Moshe specified, God will open up his treasury of goodness, the heavens, and he'll provide you rain in its time. And all of Israel will be blessed. Remember, Israel is an agricultural-based nation. Okay? And agriculture, as we all know, requires irrigation. And no, we're not like Northern Africa, like Egypt and other countries that can survive based upon the waters of the Nile overdoing its banks, and people would irrigate just with their feet by digging ditches, and water would come from the bank into their field. We're not like that. As the Torah told us, Moshe Rabbeinu, in one of his speeches in the book of Deuteronomy, we will have to be irrigated by God. And it's all dependent upon a moral, ethical behavior of Torah and mitzvot. And we saw the blessings in the Parsha of economic power and greatness, and military based upon this as well. Now, please remember, whatever rewards were promised in last week's Parsha, all those blessings is really not the capital THE reward for keeping the Torah and mitzvot. We know that the ultimate reward is spiritual, related to the future world, related to the world to come. But as we read in Vayikra, and the rebuke, which we'll talk about in a moment, this is a result of us keeping the Torah. Okay? Just like someone who's sick, who takes the remedy, okay, diagnosed and given to him by a doctor because of his sickness, and he becomes well, because why? The healing contains some sort of material that destroys maybe the agents that are making him sick, okay? So too someone that's healthy in a spiritual way, and also a physical way, that he supports his body by eating proper food, okay? He brings in the proper material elements into his body that sustains his body, makes his body healthy. He eats nutritional food, and so on and so forth. That is similar to the matter of keeping the mitzvot of the Torah. The mitzvot of the Torah are the force that sustains a member of Israel. And it's only a means. The material forces, if I eat properly and drink and sleep and do exercise, now I have the means in order to rise in my spiritual life. Rav Kook was so misunderstood by our Haredi brothers. When he wrote in the 1930s in the book called Orot, he talked about the Jewish body. And he talked about the new Jewish body here in the land of Israel strengthening itself, both the national body and young men that are doing sport. Because in order to have a healthy soul, you must have a healthy body. The body is a kli, a vessel for the soul. Okay? We said goodbye last night to my son that got off for Shabbat, and he's in the special unit of the paratroopers. They're now finishing their basic training with a week of hard training. They're going to be walking about 140, 150 kilometers or so from the south. Every night they're going to be walking all night. During the day they're going to be resting, but at night they're going to be walking with, 30, 40 kilos on their backs. They're going to be given a certain amount of food for 24 hours. How they decide to eat it and this and that, That's up to them. They're going to get six rolls and some fish, I don't know, some canned food, whatever, for 24 hours. And they're not going to take a shower at all during the week. And my wife gave him some more dates and some tchina to pack it in if he could carry, if you have any room. But a strong body, the strong body of Israel. We didn't have that for 2,000 years. And now we have youngsters strengthening their bodies so that they can do a great mitzvah call to protection of the state of Israel. Okay? That's a holy concept. Rav Kook wrote about this in the 1930s, even before the coming of the state. How the body of Israel is doing sports and working out because we're going to be a nation with an army having to protect itself. And in the Galut, we disdained, we looked negatively regarding the body. Only spirituality. That's in the Galut. We come back to the land of Israel, the national body as well is alive, first and foremost. And so to the individual body. So when we're going to be doing the mitzvot, as we learned in the speech of the mitzvot of Moshe Rabbeinu in last week's Parsha, that will be a kli, a vessel, a means to sustain spirituality. That is the real sustainer of a person in his physical way. And therefore, Am Yisrael, how will they merit to get a blessing and success in all their private and public lives? Only by keeping the Torah. And the opposite is just exactly true. That if we don't keep the Torah, it's going to cause a landslide. It's going to cause a fall and destruction. Whereas the opposite, keeping the Torah, will sustain the Jewish people and bring success. Which of course in the world of the nations of the world, this is not so. Because the unsubtle material life of the nations of the world is not the same situation. Okay? The material body of the nations of the world is not sensitive like the Jewish people, the body of the Jewish people. Okay? Spiritual phenomenons often don't have only very little influence, okay, on the national psychological matter of the nations of the world. Okay? So here we learned in last week's Parsha the warning of Moshe Rabbeinu to keep all the mitzvot. And that can cause us not only material success, but also spiritual success. And the opposite, 98 curses. Okay? If you heard or saw, the sum total of the klalot, of the long rebuke of Moshe Rabbeinu, right, was a sum total of 98. What are the letters numerically for 98? Tzadichet. Now, after finishing and learning about this long rebuke of curses of Moshe Rabbeinu, okay, that means in our Torah we have a sum total of how many places of blessings and curses? 2. 1 at the end of which Chumash? Vayikra, Parashat Bechukotai, in the book of Vayikra, Leviticus, and the second in last week's Parsha. The major difference is the first one was issued where? At Chorev at Mount Sinai, at the beginning of our 40 years of desert existence. And the second one, which we just read, is at the end of 40 years, at the eve of our entrance into the land of Israel. There are a lot of major differences between these two rebukes. Okay? The one at the beginning of our desert life, the one at the end of our desert life. Ramban, Nachmanides, talked about the differences, and I want to mention because I think this is a very good prelude for us to understand whatever Brit we're about to talk about. In Parashat Bechukotai, do you know how it began? It says, if you don't hearken to me in the mitzvot and not do the mitzvot, or if you abhor my statutes and you cannot stand my laws and not do the mitzvot, and you're going to rescind my Brit. So there, in the beginning of the rebuke in Vayikra, it's talking about a general leaving of all the mitzvot, of the Torah and the mitzvot, not able to accept and stand and tolerate the Torah. In other words, trotting upon all the mitzvot. And of course, the terrible things that can be brought to the Jewish people for doing so. I don't know if there was not something that was not seen in the Holocaust. We saw it all the terrible trials and tribulations and pain and terror that we went through. Okay? So there, in addition, we're told the land will be desolate. The cities will be destroyed. And really the truth is, if you study some Jewish history through the Talmud, at the end of the destruction of temple number 1, okay, the land was indeed desolate from Jews settling there. Even to the extent that the Talmud talks about that a bird would not even be able to fly over the land of Israel, or animals would not migrate from north to south, whatever, going there. The end of the Galut there in the first rebuke is not written explicitly, but only at the end the Torah talked about something that it doesn't talk about in this rebuke. And they're going to have to make vidui. They're going to make a confession about their sins and the sins of their fathers. And at the end of that curse in Vayikra, the Torah says in a promise, God says at Sinai, I'll remember my Brit with Yaakov, my Brit with Yitzchak, okay? The Brit with the land, and I will remember them. And the land will then be pacified and so on and so forth. And the Jews will have a better situation. I'll remember my first Brit that I took them out of Mitzrayim in the eyes of the nations of the world. In other words, there's a happy ending at the end of rebuke number 1 in Vayikra. And that means the Jews shall return to the land of Israel because God will forgive them for their sins. Why? Because there's going to be a what? An upcoming tshuva process. That is not the case by us. That's not the case in our parsha we just read here in chapter 28, because the Torah says here, the Torah opened up our rebuke in verse 15 of the chapter 28, if you wanted to look at it, and it says, and it'll be that if you won't, you, the individual, it says, doesn't say in plural, it says the individual. Im lo tishma b'kol Hashem Elokecha lishmor, and then it says, kol mitzvotav v'chukotav. The word kol is mentioned, all his mitzvot and chukot, Moshe is saying, then all these curses shall come upon you. That means in rebuke number 2, which we just read last week, not keeping all the Torah causes all the curses. That means it could be that we're doing some mitzvot, but if we're not keeping all of it, God forbid, a terrible Holocaust will come upon us. And even though inside the blessings and curses, there's no redemption promise there, the redemption section is about to come in our Parashat Nitzavim. Some call it the section of Tshuva, the section of Geula. When the Jewish people will do Tshuva, there's no doubt, we're going to read in our Parsha, there's a return to the land of Israel. But without Tshuva, there's no return to the land of Israel. In summary, the Ramban Nachmanides explains these 2 rebukes, that both of them are hinting to destruction number 1 and number 2 of the Beit HaMikdash, which leads to the Galut of both. You all know that the first temple was destroyed for which severe sins? Gilui Arayot, adultery, idolatry, avodah zarah, and shvichut damim, the bloodshed. Okay? That means there was a loathing of the Torah. We could not stand the laws. We left the mitzvot. But, you know what? There's still a strong kesher between God and Am Yisrael. And because we didn't violate all the mitzvot, or had we not violated, the Beit HaMikdash would not have been destroyed. But you know what? We did such severe sinning, and therefore the punishment came upon us. However, it was not enough for some people doing vidui. Okay? Because what happened at the beginning of temple number 2 in the time of Ezra and Nehemiah? There was, number 1, a small aliyah. Most of the Jews remained with their Persian carpets, okay? In Iraq and Iran and so on and so forth. And at the beginning of the living in the land of Israel, there was desecration of Shabbat, there was intermarriage, okay? As it stated in the books of Ezra and Nehemiah. Yet some of the leaders of the nation started doing vidui, and it helped them. helped them, merit of their ancestors, merit of Israel. And slowly the land was settled, but not all of it. It was very small. Most of the Jews remained where? In the Second Commonwealth, they remained in Chutz La'aretz. And who ruled over us? The Persian kings ruled over us. Only few came on Aliyah. Most of the Jews remained in the Galut. And that was a fulfillment of the curse that I'm going to have you dispersed amongst the Goyim. So here, when Jews do come to the land of Israel, we're going to read about that in our section. The few Jews that did come back, what happened at the end of 400 years? Which sins were violated? Social sinning, okay? Sinat chinam, innocent hatred. People did not respect one another. And the situation was very severe. My friends, at the end of these blessings and curses, some of you saw in 69, these are the words of the Brit. And then, after 7 verses, in verse 8, it says, Ushmartem et divrei Brit azot. But what Brit are we talking about? One meaning might be that these blessings and curses, aforementioned, maybe that's the Brit. But many commentators, including the Or HaChaim HaKadosh, which we're going to be relying upon, we're going to be introducing a new Brit. Let's now open up to our Parsha. And please tell me, after reading the first 7 or 8 verses, everyone please read it. Tell me about a particular word that is repeated so many times. So many times. Read from Pasuk 9, the beginning of our Parshat, and go all the way to Yud Zayin, verse 17. And maybe stop there. And tell me about a particular word. It stands out, I think, in my mind at least. That's repeated. What word do you notice, gentlemen? No, it's not the word call. Hint? No. Which word is repeated? I count only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times already at the end, by the end of verse 17. A word that's repeated. Does anyone else see what I'm saying? No. It's a word that has a little, all words are significant, right? You don't want to have an invalid Sefer Torah, but it's a word that has significance more than the word Asher, I think. It has 4 letters in it. Your. And the last letter is Mem Sofit. Hayom. For instance, Pasuk Tet, Atem Nitzavim Hayom. The end of Yud Aleph, Koreit Imcha. You said that by heart or you saw it? Inside Pasuk Yud Bet, verse 12, Leman Hakim Otcha Hayom Lo. And Pasuk Yudalet, Ki, Yudalet 14, Ki et asher yeshno po imanu omeid. Hayom. And then at the end of the Pasuk, and on and on. Rashi brings already at the beginning of the Parsha, see the first opening Rashi, you've seen it? Melamed shekinsa Moshe lifnei HaKadosh Baruch Hu biyom moto lachnisam bivrit. Today is Moshe Rabbeinu's last day of his life. Some of you know, according to our sages, the Talmud of Masechet Megillah tells us even, what is the day of his passing away? 7th of Adar. The 7th of Adar. And there he becomes completely the complete age of 120. Born on the same date, passing away on the same date, which will be how many days before the nation of Israel, led by Yoshua ben Nun, will cross the Jordan River? How many days will they mourn for Moshe Rabbeinu at the end of this book? 1 Chodesh, 1 entire month, 30 days. And then, as we open up Joshua chapter 1, the order is given to the police officers, go around and get the nation ready. In days from now, we're crossing the Jordan River. 3 days, very good. That brings us to which calendar day, the crossing of the Jordan River? Very good. How many shopping days left for Passover? Okay, so we're going to cross on the 10th of Nisan, the 10th of the first month. Let's get back to here, back to ourselves. Atem Nitzavim Hayom. Who is Atem? And by the way, Nitzav. What is the first word after the Kriyat Shema in the morning? Ani Hashem Elokechem Emet V'yatziv. Do you see that word here, Zechariah? Nitzavim. Yatziv. Stand Yatziv. Stand. Erect. Straight up. Strong. Yatziv. Nitzavim. Standing, erect, and strong. Atem Nitzavim Hayom. He's addressing the nation. We've now left the former speech of Moshe, the speech of mitzvot, of last Parsha, and now this is the Ne'um of the Brit, the speech of the Brit. So Atem Nitzavim Hayom. Who is Atem? Kulchem. Where? Lifnei Hashem Elokechem. Why is it considered Nitzav before God? Anytime the Jewish people get together, united, standing, the presence of God is there by definition. Because the presence of the nation brings the divine presence, the Shekhinah. So therefore realize, you're standing before the Shekhinah. When I was escorting a student before 3 judges, which is called as if a presence of godliness, as King David writes it in Psalms, I told my dear student, when you're walking and standing and before the Dayanim, you're like standing before God. So I told him, don't sit down until the Dayanim tell you to sit down. Okay, you're just standing erect before God as if, So, Atem Nitzavim Hayom Kulchem Lefnei Hashem Elokechem Hu. Number 1, Rashechem Shiftechem. The VIPs, the public leaders, called here Rashechem Shiftechem. The Rosh of the tribes. Number 2, Ziknechem. What is that? Someone has a senior citizen's card? No. Elders. What does an elder mean? It's a nice word in English, but please explain to everyone, what does an elder mean? The Talmidei Chachamim. Could it be someone young, like me? Even though I'm not a Talmid Chacham, could it be someone young? I used to do this like for the last 20, 30 years. It used to be dark hair, but someone, I don't know, the hair changed colors. Could it be someone young in his 40s, 50s? I'm asking you. As a Cain. Why? What does the Talmud explain in Masechet Kiddushin for the word Zaken? A play on words. Ze kana chokhmah. Little translation. Ze kana chokhmah. This one acquired wisdom. The wisdom of the Torah, obviously, right? So as the Knechem are the Torah leaders, the Torah scholars. They don't have to have a senior citizen's card. They can be people that are young. Okay? Very good. Who else? Ziknechem v'shoterechem. The executive branch of the leadership, the shoter. Okay? Who remembers seeing in the book of Devarim the mitzvah to have shotrim? Do you remember? Yes. Okay, would you please tell me the pasuk? What does it say? It's about appointing judges. Very good. Shoftim, next word. V'shotrim. Excellent. Kol hakavod, chevra. Shoftim v'shotrim. Judges and officers. Shoftim v'shotrim. Titein lecha bechol sharecha. You shall appoint in all your gates. Okay? In every city. Okay? So they have to be there as well. And then we hear, Kol Ish Yisrael. Whoever is not mentioned in this list, everyone has to be included. Who else? Next pasuk. Tapechem Nishechem. Taf are children. Okay? By the way, do we see elsewhere in this book the word taf? Who remembers a mitzvah which is performed every 7 years? What? Shemitah, that's right. But I want to know where children will have to be brought. Where is it? Hakel. Have you heard of the mitzvah called Hakel? What is it, Hakel? To congregate? Excuse me. Is it the end of Nitzavim? Is it the end of our Parsha, Hakel? Yes, it is, I think. Yeah. Is it? Can you find it? Let your fingers do the walking. Is it here? Where is the pasuk, please? Oish. Oh, it's maybe in Vayelech? Anyone see it? I don't see it. Hakel. Where? In Nitzavim, the end of this parsha? Oish, I can't find it. Ay, Menachem, when will you review? More review, you'll know it better. I talk to myself. You should think I'm a psychological. Okay. There are a lot of nice people that talk to themselves. Okay, I don't see it. Terrible. Tov, I don't know where it is. I'm giving up right now.
Does it say Hakilo?
Hakilo, where does he see it? Chapter. Which chapter, sir?
Chapter
Lamed Aleph? Yeah, go ahead. Where? Which pasuk? Kaf Chet. No. No. That's for a different speech. I don't see it. Thank you. It's a good try. Okay, we're back here. I'm sorry for the delay. We're talking about Moshe Rabbeinu. You see it? That's what your neighbor just said. No, that's not. I'm talking about the mitzvah. That's once in 7 years to congregate all of Israel, including Taf. I just wanted to show you the usage of the word Taf, which is children, infants. Okay, who's going to be part of this matter? Tapchem nishechem, your children and your wives. V'gerecha, those that have joined you, have joined the Jewish people. Okay? Asher bekerev machanecha. And now Moshe Rabbeinu notices and says, including who? Mechotev eitzecha ad shoev meimecha. Who are the woodcutters? Who are the water drawers? Huh? Who are these gerim, converts? Look at Rashi, please, and tell me what you think. Look at verse 10. Milamed, to teach us regarding the woodcutters. Shabo Knaanim litgayer bimei Moshe. We're told here by Rashi, apparently in the name of a midrash, Tanchuma, yes? Something of an episode that we don't read in the Chumash. Canaanites came up to Moshe Rabbeinu and said, can we join the Jewish people? And they apparently disguised their identity. Rashi says, and he draws a parallel to who? Yeshua. To what happened during the time of Yeshua in this next generation? There was another Canaanite entity called the Givonim. The Givonim. Okay. You feeling okay? The Givonim. What did the Givonim trick the Jewish people into doing? Stale food. We come from far. And they tricked us into making a Brit. Listen, they tricked us. We had already made a pact with them called the Brit, that we allow them to live in the land of Canaan, of course with no idolatry. That's how we understood. And then, I don't know if days or weeks later, what is disclosed? Their real identity, that they are really an entity of Canaanites. Are we allowed to make a Brit, a contract, a covenant with a Canaanite? No. Yes, we are. No. Under which condition? Right. They do not do idolatry. The land of Israel is the land of God, the land of monotheism. It does not tolerate or accept pluralism and polytheism and so on and so forth. Okay? They didn't know that, and therefore they tricked us. What does it say here? Who are these woodcutters during Moshe Rabbeinu's time? There's another entity that they came to litgayer, just like the Givonim. Do you ever see in the Tanakh that these are given him the ones that tricked us, that they converted? We don't see. I've not to find a source in the written Torah. However, I don't know if I said it here in this group a week or 2 weeks ago, when we read Masechet Kiddushin, chapter 4, Mishnah 1, and the Mishnah tells us, Asara Yuchasim Alumi Bavel, Kohanim, Leviim, Yisraelim, Mamzerim, Geirim, and Nitinim is one of the 10 lineages that made Aliyah from Babylon to come to Israel, and we're told about the laws of marriage, who can or cannot marry one another. The Talmud explained Nitinim are the Geirim from the Givonim. So somewhere along time in history, these Canaanites called the Givonim, not only was a contract made with them to allow them to live here, and then when the word came out that they tricked us, they were given menial labor like chotvei etzim, wood choppers, and shoevei mayim, and water drawers. But somewhere along the line in history, they did gior. But their gior was, of course, was a kosher gior, but David HaMelech, the Talmud explains, made a decree against them because they were gerim gru'im. What does garua mean? What's that? Cruel. No, I think garua means, what did you say? It means
worse, right?
Worse, garua, terrible, right? They were terrible gerim, something, the Talmud actually uses a different word, but it means garua. Okay. If I ever ask Yosef, Mashlamcha, he'll never say garua. He's always going to say good, right? Right? In any event, I don't want to go far. Rashi says, who's included in this Brit? Chotvei the woodcutters. Who are the woodcutters according to Rashi? No. Geirim from Canaanites. And Rashi says, Kederach, like the way Shabo Givonim b'mei Yehoshua. What is Ke? Like. Rashi draws an equation, just like the Givonim, and I think he means lied to us and tricked us into making a Brit, so too this Canaanite entity apparently tricked Moshe Rabbeinu. And they came into this Gior. Nonetheless, they too are a part of what? This Brit that we have yet to identify. So Chotei Veitzecha, Shoev Meimecha, the people doing, apparently we found out later, and therefore they're given menial tasks, hard labor. Chotvei Eitzim. What are we going to be? What were they using Chotvei Eitzim in the desert for? What were they chopping wood for in the desert, do you think? Now, in this last 40th year at least. Huh? What did they need?